Today, we're going to be unboxing a controller that I feel should be discussed a little bit more, the PS5 DualSense Edge. I'll also be sharing with you a secret feature I found along the way during this review. Alongside that, I'm going to share how I feel this compares with others in the space and how Sony may have just solved some of the biggest QA issues in the pro controller industry. With no further ado, let's get into it. Being a gamer and a tech lover, I'm a fan of innovative gear, especially if I feel that it can considerably enhance my experience. That's the exact feel that I get when I'm unboxing this. Although the box is pretty standard, it's just something about opening a brand new box of tech that always feels exciting. Also, I think it's just something about Sony's color scheme being white that makes the PS5 and the controllers feel just premium. But now, let's open this and see what it really feels like. Already, I'm liking the hard case and the weight of it all. This thing doesn't bend, and it definitely feels like I'm holding something of substance. Something for me that I feel is subconsciously associated with quality. And I know this may sound weird, but the zippers and the zipper experience on the case actually feel pretty quality. They're very smooth and easy to maneuver, and there's no worry of catching a snag on loose fabric or straight threads. It's something little, but something that definitely annoys me when it does happen. The inside of the case is just as nice. Like I said, there's no loose fabric, and there's proper space for the controller and the accessories to fit. I know this may seem obvious, but it's kind of surprising with some of these premium controllers how the case may be a bit too small to fit in the accessories and the controller comfortably. A lot of these cases actually create unnecessary pressure, and they can damage your thumbsticks over time when they're pressing on them continuously, especially when they're zip closed. The only way I see this case actually doing that to your thumbsticks is if you stored it with control freaks and maybe you stored it with something on top of it. And like I said, even if you store it with control freaks, it's just very subtle pressure that it still feels at that point. At the top of the case on the inside, you get a little net where you can store your USB-A to USB-C cable. At first, I didn't like the little net at the top because it just didn't seem big enough. But then I realized that it was done intentionally to help prevent us from storing the controller in a way that's going to adversely affect the sticks like I was saying before. This is a small detail, but something I noticed and not something that Microsoft thought of when they created the Elite Series 2 case. But something this case does have in common with the Elite Series 2 case is that you can charge the controller while it lies in the case. The only difference is with the DualSense Edge, you connect the cable directly to the controller, versus in the Elite Series 2 case, it sits on a dock that you connect the cable to. Another cool, unique feature of this case is the QR code here. This QR code will take you to a support page where it walks you through setting up your new controller. There's another small detail, but I think it's very useful because who really keeps their user guides and refers to them when they need to do something with their controller, or any piece of tech for that matter. Also, if we're speaking from an eco-friendly standpoint, Sony is up here. Picking up the controller itself, it looks and feels impressive. The design's sleek, and I like the contrast, the black touchpad. And I like that they retain the ergonomic contours of the standard controller, because this controller just feels nice and comfortable in my hands. The textured grips feel nice as well, and a plus for those long gaming sessions. And like I said before, this build quality feels top-notch, and I expect this controller to actually hold up for some time. But only time will really tell that. As for the accessories that come with this controller, you're going to get 3 joystick caps, standard, high dome, and low dome. Then for the back buttons, you actually get 2 options here. You're going to have half dome buttons, which I think is kind of new that we're seeing a little bit more with these pro controllers. And you're going to get some of the more standard lever back buttons, which is going to be more equivalent to what you see with the Elite Series 2 controller and some of the others in the industry. And for those of you wondering if these levers are interchangeable with the Elite Series 2 controller, they're not. But here is where lies that secret feature I was telling you about. If you take these levers and you flip them, they're going to look and function similar to a Scuf controller, but they're actually going to be a little bit better in my opinion. And that's due to the curvature of the levers, making actuating these very easy and more ergonomic. And one more detail of the case is that it's going to accommodate whether you have your levers in the first position or the second position, or using the dome. It doesn't give up any snugness or security in storage. Then, with the DualSense Edge, we get something that's not common with controllers, a connector housing. What the connector housing does is it allows you to lock your cable in place for your controller. I'm not sure if Sony got a lot of complaints with people stating that their controller cables were coming out during gameplay, So if you're one of those people, you got your concern answered. But for those of us that might have kids and gaming in more of an active environment, this lock may not be for you. If your cable is locked in your controller, your PS5 is most likely coming down if there's an unexpected tug on that cable. So just consider this if you consider using this connector. There's another potential accessory here that's purchased separately, and that's going to be the thumbstick unit. So if your thumbstick ever goes out, you actually have a place for a spare thumbstick in the case. That's what this little square hole is for. And this is the feature that I was talking about that I think Sony is changing the game. They're giving us the ability to change out just our thumbstick units if we get stick drift. So that means that we don't have to go out and spend $200 on a brand new controller or find another alternative. Stick drift is probably the biggest issue that we have with any of the controllers in the space. I think Sony is very genius with this idea, and I'm interested to see what other brands catch on to this and start adding something like this to their controllers. I see this as a very solid solution, not just for Sony, but for other brands, because it helps improve customer retention and LTV, as users are going to give more money to the brand when they're purchasing the replacement stick units. Users are going to complain less, and customer loyalty for the brand in general is likely going to improve because people are looking at the brand as looking out for the customer's interests. This is definitely something I feel that we're getting less and less of other brands. So props to Sony here. As with the standard PS5 controller, we get to enjoy the adaptive triggers and the haptic feedback. But with the DualSense Edge, you're going to get 3 trigger stop stages: short, medium, and long. And obviously, the short is going to be useful for when you're playing FPS games where you need to actuate very quickly. And then the long or the medium, you're going to use in more situations where maybe you're playing a racing game where the trigger length really kind of matters. With that said, the adaptive triggers will not work as intended if you're utilizing the short or medium trigger stops. Within the settings app on the PS5 is where the real customization happens. This is where you're going to want to go to get the most out of your controller. When you go in to make a custom profile, you're going to see that you get 3 empty slots. Here, you can make a profile for whatever game or person you want. If you need more, you can create more here and switch them on and off as necessary. Once you get into editing your profile, you can choose to customize your button layout, stick, and dead zone sensitivity. You also can adjust your trigger dead zones, vibration, and trigger effect intensity. As is probably your main reason of getting one of these controllers, let's first talk about customizing the button layout. We talked a little bit about the back buttons already, but it's worth noting that the 2 back buttons are remappable to function as any of the front buttons. This is very similar to many other controllers, and the only buttons that you're not going to be able to remap these 2 are going to be the Create, Option, PS, and Function buttons. However, you can swap the Create and Option buttons between one another. The only other alternatives for the Create, Options, and PS buttons is that you can disable them. Not sure why you would want to do that, but you can. But one thing that's strange is that the Function buttons here at the bottom, they can't be disabled. So be careful not to hit them when things get a little intense. And to clarify what I'm referring to are the 2 buttons below the joysticks at the bottom of the controller. These are the 2 function buttons. They serve as additional customizable menu type buttons that allow you to perform additional actions like swap controller profiles, adjust your headset volume, and adjust your headset game and chat mix. You're probably already thinking it, and no, these buttons don't function as additional remappable buttons. There are currently no other uses for these buttons outside of those that I mentioned. Also, these wouldn't serve very well as remappable buttons, as it would require you to move your thumbs off the joysticks, which kind of defeats the purpose of having these controllers. The next customizable feature is the stick and dead zone sensitivity. You get 6 stick curve options. These change the input and response to your thumbsticks. These can be very helpful in games where there isn't a native option available and you need to fine-tune your stick precision. I recommend playing around with each of these to see what's ideal for you and your situation. You can also fine-tune the curve adjustment to really dial things in. Not something I've really seen with other brands. Then you can adjust your dead zone. This is typically something I don't touch unless I get stick drift, and I wouldn't expect you to either, but it's there if you need to do it. If you don't have stick drift, I recommend you keep this at 0 unless you have a specific use case. And while we're speaking of dead zones, you can adjust the trigger dead zones. These are what you commonly hear called hair triggers in other controllers. or digital triggers where you can adjust how much you depress the trigger before it registers digitally. You can make it respond quickly or you can delay it. And this would be in addition to the physical trigger stops that you get in the back. If you're pairing the two, make sure you test this out before you actually put it in use, because you can get some wonky things happening. Then you can adjust the vibration intensity of the controller. For more casual gaming sessions, you probably want it on when you want that immersive feel, but if you're playing something that's more competitive like an SPS game, you might want to turn this off. And that's because precision is key and a vibration can throw off your aim just slightly. And back in the main setting for this controller, the next thing that you can decide on is how you can receive feedback when switching profiles on it. You can choose to have the lights flash at the bottom of your touchpad or have the controller vibrate. The next setting simply allows you to choose if and how your function menu displays. The last customization setting allows you to adjust the brightness of the indicator of the lights at the bottom of the touchpad. This is likely a preference to help conserve battery life, but the difference between dim and bright is not drastic. And as the lights aren't such an active part of the experience of this controller, I don't foresee it really affecting your battery life. The rest of the settings here are pretty standard, where it's going to be taking a tour of the controller, updating your controller software, or resetting your controller if it ever misbehaves. After getting some time with this controller, I have to say that I'm a fan. This is largely due to the familiar feel of the standard controller or the Elite Series 2. The Elite Series 2 is my favorite controller these days, and the paddles are second nature to me now. As the DualSense Edge has a paddle layout similar to the Elite Series 2, it didn't take much of me getting used to it to really start to feel that I liked it, especially as I played through Spider-Man 2. The adaptive triggers and haptic feedback function in line with the standard controller and elevated the gameplay by adding an extra dimension of realism with every web pull. The back buttons were definitely a game changer, as it made it easy for me to rotate my camera when I was striking and jumping during fights. The DualSense Edge definitely stands out on its own, but it's worth comparing to some of the other controllers to try to help you get a better idea of what this controller is really like and if it's for you. In my opinion, the DualSense Edge controller offers a unique gaming experience that sets it apart from others in the industry. Its innovative features like the swappable thumbstick units, the interchangeable and flippable back paddles, and the function buttons that allow for quick adjustments on the go through simple button combos truly make it a game changer for most gamers. With that said, let's go through some of the pros and cons that I found. Let's start with the pros. As I talked through many of these already, I won't take too much time on these. So first, we're going to talk about the diverse back buttons, the domes, and the flippable levers. It's nice to see this controller come with the two types to satisfy the needs of the different types of users. The swappable joystick units, like I said, I think this is huge and it can be a game changer for the industry. Now, I don't really have to consider or think about if the warranty is long or good enough for me to get my controller replaced if something goes wrong with the joystick. I can just replace it for a fraction of the price of the controller. Next is the case. It's very solid, and the details and the functionality of the case are top-notch. Then we have the controller itself. With them not straying very far outside the standard controller, the look and feel is very familiar, but with additional features that don't compromise my experience with the controller. Also, I did mention this before, but it has diverse compatibility. It works with PC, Android, and iOS. Something really worth noting, because not all Bluetooth or wireless controllers work with platforms like this, especially iOS. It utilizes USB-C. PS5 accepts both USB-A and C, and any combination will work. This is very helpful if the USB-A port on your console is taken up. The next pro is that you get full button remap customization, meaning that you can remap any of the buttons on the controller, not just the buttons in the back, but any of the core gameplay buttons, including the triggers, X, B, square, triangle, all those. This comes in really handy when you're in a game and it doesn't have that option within the menu for you to utilize the buttons in the way that you want to. The next pro is with the stick sensitivity. You have a great variety of the different curves that you can use and you can really fine tune them. But also, something that is not really done with the Elite Series 2 and the accessories app is that they give you an explanation of what each curve does. So no need to look up on YouTube to find a video like mine or from another creator that's going to explain how these curves work. And then the last pro is going to be the function buttons. I like the simple combos that you have just to change things and settings on the go. Now for the cons. The cons for this controller, As you probably know, I'm going to mention first, if you've been watching any of my videos, is going to be the 2 back buttons. I love having the 4 back buttons on the back with my Elite Series 2 because I don't ever have to take my thumbs off the joysticks when I'm doing anything. And as you know, in FPS games or anything like that that's more competitive, where you need to keep your thumbs on the joysticks, that really matters. Next is the joystick caps. The largest joystick cap is still too small, and it doesn't elevate the stick to help the precision in aiming. So for me, I still need to go out and get some control freaks and put these on the controller, and it feels perfect. Then my next con is for the function buttons. I know I have this as a pro, but I also have it as a con because I wish that you can disable them in certain situations where you don't have to worry about accidentally actuating them. I feel like this is something that could be a hot fix that they can put in the app and allow us to do that in the future. Fourth is going to be price. Price with this controller is around $200 MSRP. You might be able to get this on discount at some point. I would expect this to go on discount coming the holidays because it's been out for a while. But I definitely think price is an issue because I've seen competitors with controllers about half the price that have similar functionality. As for my final thoughts on this controller, the question is the PS5 DualSense Edge really worth it? Absolutely. From its sleek design to its innovative features, it's clear that Sony has raised the bar with this controller. And I'm very critical of the durability of these Pro controllers as I'm paying a premium and expect durability and longevity when it comes to that. To me, Sony has done a great job in making it easy to fix the most common issue with these Pro controllers, and that's stick drift. We all know stick drift is just one of the issues, but it is the biggest issue. There are other issues that happen with these Pro controllers, but to me, this is a great start, and hopefully we see some influence spread throughout the rest of the industry. The only thing that I really feel missing from this controller is that it needs 2 more back buttons. The 2 back buttons are great, but if it had 4, I think this controller would be next level. And if I were a PC gamer with a controller, if this had 4 buttons, I think this would be my primary controller. If you're a casual gamer or getting after it competitively, this controller is definitely going to elevate your game. So tell me, what are your thoughts on the DualSense Edge? Have you tried it out yet? Are you looking to pick one up? Is there something that I didn't mention in this review that you think I should have covered? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you got to say. And while you're down there, feel free to like and subscribe if you like this video and you want to see more like this, or if you have a content suggestion. Until next time, peace.